Speaking first for opening opposition.
Helena.
Closing government. Closing opposition. Great. Everyone happy? Recording? Great. So let's call upon, as before, speakers assembled to like the first last one protected. I imagine there are any questions. Great. I'd like to call upon the first speaker.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this house would take the children of Roma who live in traditional lifestyle into state care. So basically, traditional lifestyle, well, every Roma person who is living by the traditional life, it's very important to be noticed that traditional lifestyles, except cultural and all that stuff, also includes nomad lifestyle, because we all know that the Roma population is the modern nomads of the whole Europe. Into state care, we are going to give them everything they need, from education, health care, social care, and all that stuff needed to have a normal life. Our model is going to be based in European Union. Why? Because we believe the majority of Roma population lives in European Union, and we believe that in 20 years from now, the whole countries that have a lot of Roma population will be in the European Union. And also we think that the system of the European Union can afford this kind of changes. Basically, the countries with a lot of Roma population are Hungary, Spain, Macedonia, Serbia. So basically, Croatia, the Balkan countries, Eastern European countries. So basically, more or less, they are all in the European Union. We are talking about three or less countries that are going to get into European, we believe, in the next 10 years. So basically, a little bit background of the Roma population. Well, basically, they are exposed a lot to poverty because of their lifestyle. They walk around Europe a lot. They are going from town to town, exposed to treaty jobs, exposed to poverty, exposed to criminal activities and all that stuff. And we think that this is awful. We think that this is maybe it will sound like a stereotype, but generally speaking, a lot of the Roma population are living in very, very bad conditions. We think that this is part of their traditional lifestyle because they have some traditional values who are actually hurting their normal life. So what we are saying that the parents are poor and they cannot afford the normal development of their children. They cannot afford their education. I will take in a sec. They cannot afford their education, they cannot afford their health care, and all that stuff needed for healthy development of the children. But before I continue.
Would you take every child which lives below the poverty line into state care? And
if
why?
he lives under the traditional Roma values, yes. Every child that is poor, that has not the basics of life, because we are a good country and we believe in that. So basically, there have been poor attempts during these years to make affirmation of the Roma population. We now live in a decade called Roma decade, because countries are now striving to help this group. So basically, we believe that there is interest in the country, and we think that this model is the right thing to do because it will help the future generation to affirm the Roma. So basically, what we are saying is we need to give them the equal opportunities as a country because they don't have them now. We are saying that this needs to be done to the children because they will grow up, they will be properly educated, and they can start a good life. Basically, we are not saying that we are against their tradition. We are saying they can practice their culture. They can go around everywhere they want because European Union is going to provide this. We can live in Spain, be part of their state care. After that, live in France, be part of their state care because we are going to move a lot because this is part of their tradition. We believe that these people are the citizens of European Union. So what we are going to get and why we need to do this. But before I continue, we have, yeah, sir.
Sir, the parents are known to be naturally biologically responsible for their children unless we inflict some harm on them. If this doesn't happen, why are Roma parents different from any other parents?
Well, because basically, as I said, they are poor. They want to give them the same chances, but they don't have the same conditions because they are stuck in tradition. And we are saying that because they move a lot, they don't have IDs, they don't have all that stuff needed for a proper democratic way of life, modern way of life. So we are saying that we are going to give them for free for their children in order they to grow up equally good as the people from the other ethnic groups. So this is why we are giving this to the children, because they have been stuck in a tradition, they have been stuck in a very bad system. The government haven't done a lot for this population. They don't have representatives in the House of the Parliament. They don't have any representatives to give them a voice. We're saying future generations, we are going to give them healthcare, we are going to give them everything needed so they can grow up and create a group that can affirm the Roma population later on. So what we are going to get? Well, as I said, educated Roma population, because now we are giving them books, we are now giving them proper education in the country, and we are giving them everything needed. But yes, sir.
If your problem is that Roma people are uneducated, what is the problem with just giving them quotas at universities?
Well, the university is not the problem. They don't have the basic education needed. We are saying that we're going to give them everything needed, from public education, from healthcare, from, I don't know, giving them money they need to continue. And we're not only talking about education, we are also talking about healthcare. Sometimes Roma population are suffering because they don't have the proper healthcare needed for their future development. And what we are saying here, this generation will grow up. We are not saying that this model will last for years and years. We are saying that we are going to do this as long as it's needed, so we can have a new generation of Roma people who can take care for themselves. They had the proper education, they had the proper healthcare, they had the proper social care. So basically, they have everything needed so they can develop equally enough as the rest of the people of the European Union. And why we need to do this? Because we are going to teach a whole generation of people how to take care of themselves, something that we have needed to be done years before. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Steve. I'd like to call on the first speaker of the opposition.
Just a second, something is. Left. Stopwatch. Thanks. I don't know how to reset. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thanks. Okay, started. We don't think that these kids will actually have what they need, because they will not have the bond with their parents and the emotions that can be provided only by parents, and also the education and the values that the child can teach only from parents that cannot gain in school, or even worse, in some state care program. What you will get from my speech is why we believe that this child will always be better off with family, why we believe that these kids will never be inclined to actually integrate into the society, which will make their life feel much worse than now. And at the end, you will get why we believe that majority has no right to define a normal lifestyle, and then, without any discussion, to put that lifestyle on minorities without having any discussion. And we will also explain that that will probably lead to that minority, or Romas in this case, not willing enough to ever integrate or change some things that might be bad for them. Before that, a couple of points of rebuttal. Firstly, what we get from the opening half is actually that not the Romas, not the conditions and the poverty is a problem here, but the traditional lifestyle is a problem. Because if conditions and poverty were problems, then we would be taking kids from every family that has no enough money to provide good life for their kids. Yet we do not do that. We help those families in some way in order to develop their kids in best way, but we do not take them away and put them in state cares, which we would do with them. Which means that we do not actually have problem with poverty, which means that actually we're having problem that we do not accept their lifestyle and we think that it's bad, and without any discussion we simply want to ban it and put our concept on lifestyle on them, and we believe that we have no legitimacy and that it will only bring more harms. No, thank you. Also, we will present you with alternatives that can make these Romas actually live better. You have quotas that you can give them in parliament and university. You can incentivize parents to actually send their kids to school with many things. You can, I don't know, help them find a job if they send their kids to school, give them money or whatever. But we believe that this is way too harsh for them, and we also believe that this is way too harmful for their entity, and we believe that we have no right to do so. So if we're having problem with Romas being excluded in a society, we have alternatives that will help them to integrate more, and we believe that this plan would make them even more excluded from the society than they are now. And talking about equal chances. Firstly, orphans do not have equal chances in the society because they were taking away something that we believe is extremely important in characteristic development, which is actually having bond with your parents. And secondly, we are taking the only equality that Romas actually have in our society, and that is the fact that they get to be raised by their family and loved by their family. And that is something that gives them equality with other kids nowadays. And we are now taking that away from them because we believe that the concept their parents are transferring to them is not bad. Now on to my constructive. Firstly, why we believe they will be better off with a family. Because family gives you love, and no state institution will ever be interested into providing you that. Why? Because state has no bond with you that your parents actually have. Your parents have emotional and physical bonds with you. They do care about some stuff that state will never actually care about. They care about whether you're happy or not, whether you like some chocolate or not. The state simply sees you as a statistic that needs providing something as a minimum. And they will never actually help you develop a very important side of your life, because we believe that people have rational side but also irrational side, which is based on what you were taught from your parents, from your family, from people that emotionally actually meant something to you. And we believe that these kids will always be left without this side because they will be raised in terms of being perceived as a simple statistic, which means that it will only make them feel even less happy than they would in a status quo. And we also want to argue whether they actually feel unhappy in a status quo, which brings me to the fact that one unhappy child raised without love and family will never integrate. Why will they never integrate? Because they will never be inclined to engage. Because the only thing that state did to them and what they can see is that the state did something bad. They took them away from their parents that they loved the most. Secondly, they put them somewhere where they are not providing them love, or they're only providing them practical stuff. They took their lifestyle and their tradition away from them without ever explaining why their traditional lifestyle is actually that bad. So what actually happens? That child doesn't feel loved. It feels like a simple number, and he starts hating them. Why? Because not only that you took me away from my parents, but for some reason those guys think they are the smartest just a second, and that is why they ban me to live the life my parents predicted for them. And why would I ever want to incline with people that are only putting their concepts above and pretending that our concepts of life actually don't exist? Before I continue, go.
We never said that we are going to take away them from their homes. We said that we are going to give them state care for free.
No, you said that you will take them away from your parents and that you will actually make them live the life their parents do not consider a right one. But let's even say that you said that. We believe, and that brings me to my third argument, that it's very bad to have majority dictate to a minority what a concept of a lifestyle is. Why? No, because maybe we can argue whether or not Roma's lifestyle is the best. But what we can say is that we do not have a right to deny their lifestyle, and we do not have a right to put our lifestyles on them. Why? Because that creates conflicts, and that creates intolerant and unacceptable and excludable society, which we believe that it is bad, because it stops the progress and it stops engaging that can happen between minorities and majorities. Why? Because in order to have progress, in order to have acceptance, and in order to actually change their lifestyle, in order to get better, what you need to have is a dialogue. And in order to have that dialogue, you need to allow other side to actually talk. You need to allow other side to actually express him or herself. You cannot simply act like your life and your concept is actually the best. Because what will happen? Those parents are only going to be pissed off because they have their kids no more. Secondly, they will only be pissed off because someone told them what you do is bad. We're not going to try to give you constructive advice how you can improve it, because we may basically think you're incapable to do that, so we will do that instead of you. which will only make them feel even less integrated in a society. And we do have a huge problem with integration of Romas. Like 70% of unemployment Romas live here in Serbia and they cannot get a job. And that is what makes them feel excluded. By giving them constructive advices, by actually showing them that they have a problem, by actually trying to enter any sort of dialogue with them, you do have chances of actually progressing, because in that moment you are showing them we are equal and we respect everything that you believe in, but we think that if you change some things in your culture, you will have a chance of progress. And that is how we see that something can happen. By coming like this and saying we believe that what you're doing is wrong, we believe that what you're doing is harmful, and therefore we are going to put our solution because we believe that we are the best, we believe that we can only create an unacceptable society that does not want to integrate, because majority doesn't accept the minority feels even more excluded than now, and minority has no incline to ever integrate. And for all these reasons, we beg you to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that speech. I'd like to vote for an exception to the government.
Sorry. Sorry.
So hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm the Deputy Prime Minister and I'm here to explain our model which the opposition didn't understand. Actually, we never said that we will take the children away from their families, and we never said that this lifestyle is bad. We only said that this lifestyle, because of its the nature of the lifestyle, may leave people in poverty, and we want to improve this. We want the lifestyle, but this little consequence of this lifestyle we want to improve and to make this lifestyle even more better, not better. Well, I will explain why. You know the system we have right now, giving stipends to Roma people, giving benefits, but only in one country. And as the first speaker said, Roma people are nomads. They go from country to country, they transfer all around the Europe. And we with our model want to implement this in all European Union, because if one Macedonian Roma kid has the benefits only in Macedonia, and their family, because of their tradition, moves to Germany, with this model we want to give them same beneficials in Germany, because if we give this in Macedonia, and when he moves to Germany, he'll probably live in poverty because of the lifestyle. We want to give the same benefits in that country, so we will improve this consequence of this lifestyle. And as we said, we never said that they will, with our model, take away kids from their parents. And they said that we as a majority don't have a right to judge, don't have a right to dictate something to minority. Actually, it's not like that. Actually, this minority in all countries wish and want these benefits. They said that they want it, and we give them. Go.
Taking someone into state care means you take them away from their parents and put them into state custody. That's what state care means.
Actually, no. We define state care as giving benefits to these children so they can develop more, because right now they have a problem. No, thank you. They have a little problem with their lifestyle, and they said that orphans they will be orphans, they will feel bad because they don't have the love from their families, they should be raised by the family. We actually agree with this. They should be raised by their family, but and that family should give them the proper love. But if the family give the love but don't have the money to give them the proper education, here we are the actor. We, the state, believe that your parents should give you the love, and we as a state should give you the education and the proper healthcare. And later I said something about majority dictating to minority, but as this majority wants these benefits, we as a majority, I define the European Union should give these benefits. We believe that we are the people with money, and we should give them these benefits in order to improve their nomadic lifestyle. Later. No, thank you. Later they said that no state will allow this because state doesn't love you, you are just statistics. Actually, no. The states, as Germany, as France, accept many immigrants in their country, because there's two options. One is that immigrant will use all the stipendies and will become I don't know, scientists, and will raise the economy of the country. And the second is also will raise the economy of the country if he doesn't use this, because he will maybe work some 3D jobs, but he will make him with education. He will be in the system. He will get a proper healthcare. He will not just be nomad who doesn't have these benefits. And the state will allow this because it will help their economy. The Germans actually doesn't have people who are working their 3D jobs, and they are ready to give healthcare education to people who will work this. Same as the Turkish people in Germany and in France. And also they said that this would be done through dialogue. Actually, right now we have many dialogues. Actually, there are many Roma organizations who say that they want these benefits, they want proper education, they want proper healthcare, they want to be in the system. So there is a wish, they have a wish to be in the system. And right now, with this model, thank you, we are fulfilling their wish, and we are giving their benefits not just in one country, then in whole European Union. And the reasons for that were stated by my first speaker, because of their lifestyle, because of their specific lifestyle, they have these consequences of bad, no thank you, of poverty and all that stuff. But let's talk about the second thing. This solving one major problem. It's called segregation. Roma people claim that they are segregated everywhere in the world, and also European Union have a policy to solve this segregation. And solving this segregation will not just do through a dialogue. It will be done through direct action, through affirmative action, through giving them education, giving them job, and putting them into the state system. And this model actually proposes this, actually supports the European Union and supports the Roma people. Their dream is to be in the system and not to be segregated. We are giving this with education, because they will not be segregated. They will be educated, and they will can progress more in every country. And because the segregation is happening because, as we said, because of their lifestyle. And if we give the benefits, they will not be segregated, because they can develop more in every country, not just in one, as they have the benefits now. And because with this model, we prove that we want to improve the status quo, and we are not actually segregating. We are not taking away from the parents. We just want to give the benefits all around Europe. We beg you to vote for opposition. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to talk about the right to cultural identity, how it is formed. When do we have a right to change some values of your culture, and when we do want to change something in your culture which we consider harmful, how is that actually done, and how do we actually change some values within a certain culture which we may perhaps consider demeaning to your conception of a good life? But before that, I have to deal with a bit of rebuttal. Now, firstly, we are an ESL team, but when you say that you bring someone into state care, that does mean that you take them away from their own parents and put them into state custody. Giving them affirmative action, giving them quotas in schools, giving them aid, that's called benefits, that's called social aid. But the point is, when you take someone into social care, especially children, we think it's clear that by that it's meant that we will take them into state custody. They will be in state centers, be it orphanages or whatever, but they will be taken care of by the state rather than by their parents. Now that that's clear, we have to deal with the crux of the Gov case, because they do bring, even with that, they do bring several important points. Now, firstly, he talks about how we have a problem with integration of immigrants within Europe, within France, and we say that this problem exactly happens because we usually don't understand those identities, and we just try to implement so-called European values upon them. We try to force Muslim women in France not to wear burqas, thinking that will solve the problem of women in Islamic society. It usually doesn't happen that way, and especially when you try to put such a superficial measure upon different cultures, it usually leads to a backlash because the culture feels it is under attack just because it holds certain values, rather than understanding why some values may be bad in itself. That's changed much more gradually, that's changed much in a different way. The third thing about help to Romas in the European Union. We do agree that you have a lot of problem of illegal Roma immigrants within the EU, especially from Balkan countries which have yet to join the EU. But we would say that those problems are also solved by asylum centers, by giving them European citizenship. Fun fact, that was actually the finals motion of Belgrade Open 2 years ago. We think that would be a sufficient alternative. We think that basically giving them that type of aid can much better foster integration within European society rather than just forcing them not to be with their families. And this brings me to my constructive material, because in essence we believe that such a measure as Opening Gov want to implement is in essence attack on Roma identity. Why do we say this? Because we say if poverty is the problem, if children are living so bad that even their most basic needs like food or water cannot be fulfilled, then we take them away, but not because they live a traditional lifestyle, but rather because their own lives are endangered because they suffer from diseases or whatnot. So in such a situation we say it's okay. If the problem is that Roma people are usually uneducated, then again we say you can just give them quotas in universities. You can financially incentivize parents to send them into schools and not send them to be beggars in the street by giving them money if they send their kids to schools. We think that's a much better alternative. Why do we think so? Because in essence, if they claim that the problem is with the culture, if the problem is not with the lack of education or the poverty, but rather with the culture because that's the only thing left, then those problems are solved in different ways. How? Firstly, on a principle level, we don't think that the state necessarily has a right, blanket right to impose a cultural identity or to change someone's cultural identity like this upon you. If from the cultural identity and the tenets of that culture results a direct harm, like child abuse, then again in that situation it's okay to take a child away from their parents, but because they are abused rather than because they live a certain lifestyle. And not only that, but we also do already allow parents to impose certain values of their culture upon their kids. We do allow parents of different culture to circumcise their own children even before they come of age. We think we already allow parents to impose their own culture upon their kids. We think that's perfectly okay.
Sure.
Yes?
But if that culture does not give the child the necessary education and preparedness to enter society, that is child abuse, and that's why the state has the right to intervene.
Okay, here's the thing. How actually do you change society? Because my partner already proved to you, just taking the child away and putting it in an orphanage where the lifestyle isn't that good, where they won't live in much better conditions than they do already right now, because generally orphanages tend not to be so affluent, they tend not to be so rich, so we don't think necessarily that life in an orphanage is much better. Also, they don't get the care which they would get from their parents, they don't get the love which is also important to a child's identity. We don't think that their lives will become much better if they do live in an orphanage. But how do cultures actually change? Firstly, we say that cultures can change from within, where a certain culture realizes that a certain value they hold are not so good. They realize that themselves. But more importantly, if they don't do that, then how do we actually change their culture? We give them a big incentive to integrate in society in a certain way. For example, take the Sikhs in Canada. The Sikhs they're known for their turbans. Now, what's the problem with that? You have to wear a hat if you're a member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Now, they had two options. One was not to let Sikhs into the Royal Canadian Mounted Police whatsoever, which would make the Sikhs feel like they're being excluded from a society just because of their identity. But they withdrawn. But they say you can serve in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and you're still allowed to wear your turbans. Now, why is that important? By making a friendly gesture first to a certain culture, especially a marginalized culture as the Roma are, You're willing to show them that you're not attacking their identity per se, but that they need simply to moderate some of their own values in order to integrate into society. We believe that by offering them, for example, financial incentives, by saying we're not going to take your children away just because you called a certain culture, by not even enraging them more, you're much more likely to change them. Why do we think that happens? Firstly, because we don't think that just forcing someone and removing someone from their parents solves anything. The kids hate you for taking them away from their parents. The parents hate the state because they think they're just taking their children away because they live a certain lifestyle. But most importantly, because the culture forms your way of how you view the world, it forms your own most basic values. So in essence, in order to change a culture, you need to condone to those basic values. You need to agree with their values and just to give them an incentive to change them in a different way. If you attack the very values in which a culture is formed, you never change it because people perceive that as a very attack on themselves. When a culture thinks that you're attacking it only because they hold certain values, rather than saying some values could be moderated, they will never change. That will only create a backlash. That will only create people who are even less likely to want to integrate in society, and that will not solve the problem, which is the integration of Roma people in today's society. We oppose.
Thank you very much for that speech. I'd like to call on the third speaker as the government.
Dear Speaker, okay, so let me open the second half of the debate. I'm gonna engage into a bit of rebuttal, react to their counterprop. Then I'm gonna go on with my own positive material, open the second half, and provide an extension, which is the society's right and duty to implement this measure. So basically, what they are saying is that you can resolve this thing with incentives, and you can resolve these things with quotas, and by changing a bit the institutions, you can integrate the Romas. Well, we believe this is not the case, because the problem is that if you don't agree in the aims, in the fundamental values, then you cannot just provide incentives to go in that direction. If you don't agree with the direction, you cannot speed up things by providing incentives. Then they were also and for the rest of their point, I'm gonna engage into a rebuttal like embeddedly, because I think our points directly clash with theirs. Okay, so we have a strange situation, because I think the opposition and the government agrees with the problem. We both agree that Romas nowadays have poorer life chances than others in the majority of the society. They can't really have the same life as they did, as we do, the majority population of the Eastern European countries. So we agree that there is a problem here. Now, the second question to ask is, how did we get here? And what does it mean to be a Roma in nowadays? Well, how did we get here? We get here because we discriminate Roma people in our societies. We don't give them the same chances as we do for the majority of the population. We discriminate them based on their race. We don't employ them. We don't provide them the education which we provide for other children. We don't provide the medical health. We don't provide the same stuff as we do for the majority. So then the question is, and what does it mean to be Roma for this reason? For this reason, to be Roma, it means to be isolated in the society. Roma equals isolation because of the majority discrimination. You're isolated and you're not participating in the society, and therefore, because you isolate your children too, you're not providing a free choice for them to choose their own lifestyle, because they are brought up in a society which is isolated from the rest of the society. So then the question to ask is what to do as a society, as a community, if you have a minority which isolates its children and which lives isolated in your country, to change this minority. Yeah, second.
Amish communities also isolate the children. At the age of 18, they can choose if they want to belong to that community or leave. Roman children have the same opportunity.
But we think it's not the same, because the Amish community is not discriminated as bad as Roma people are in our societies. Because the Amish were living together with the rest of the population of the US, they were living in harmony, and they hardly interact. But the Roma people are trying to get integrated into our societies, and we continuously push them back, we continuously discriminate against them. So why is the duty of a society to change this situation? Well, it's a duty because we were the first who were responsible for getting there. And this is special about the Roma case, and this is why this motion applies to the Roma specifically. because we are the ones who are discriminating against people belonging to this race, so we have a duty to change this thing. We have a duty to provide democratic equality to all of our citizens. And then why the children? Why not the parents? Why do we have to apply to these children? Well, we have to apply this to the children because their mind is fresh, because we have an opportunity to shape their mind and to integrate them into the society better. This is why we don't apply the same thing to the parents, because the parents were already socialized in this isolated community. They already tried their way to integrate to the majority situation. They didn't succeed. But the children didn't went through the same process. So if we just take them away and if we provide them state care, then we're fulfilling our duty to provide the same chances to all of our citizens. And why do we have a right to do this? It's not just a duty. And this is my second point. Well, we have a right to do this because of the social contract. Because if you benefit from the society, even the Roma people don't benefit as much as the rest of the population, but they still get some of our welfare system, some of our benefits. So I think we as a society, we should be allowed to force them to contribute and to chip in to the rest of the thing, because and this is the social contract argument. And because for instance they get conscripted to the army, they get something from the pension system, they get something from the social security. So that I think that we as a society, in exchange, we should be allowed to ask them to contribute to. And then there's a second thing, which is linked to the individual freedom. Because what does it mean to grow up children in isolation? It means that you're not giving them the chance of choosing a lifestyle. Because after you were brought up in a state care facility, or whatever, I'm not going to engage with them, you can still go back to your parents and live your life as a Roma as you did in the past. But you made a conscious choice. You were exposed to the counter arguments. You were exposed to an education. Yeah, open.
You're talking about a choice. Right now, every Roma child gets to stay with a family or leave. By your plan, there is no choice for them. We are taking them away and we're giving them our concept of life, and they can never choose what they want.
Thank you. But we think it's not the same, because children are not responsible for their fate, and they were not exposed to the counter arguments. There is a reason why we call them children, and the reason is that they can be easily harmed, and we need to protect them. We need to provide them the kind of protection which, if the parents don't do, the state has to do. And then they're going to say this, okay, but this is like cultural brainwashing because you're putting them into the education system. But we think there is a minimum in the education system which you need to learn, which is not culturally loaded. It's knowing the basics of being a citizen of your community. It's learning the basic stuff. It's learning the basic math. It's learning the basic, literature, is in the basic philosophy, and this is not something which detaches and attacks your culture. This is just something which democracy needs, because democracy ultimately needs people who can have conscious choices, because this is what it means to be a citizen, to do conscious choices. And you can only implement this measure with an isolated community for which we are responsible for their isolation if we take away their children, and if we provide them the kind of education, the kind of minimal education which is not culturally loaded, but which allows them to make a free choice whether they want to go back or they want to join in the majority society, because it will be much easier for them to join once they were brought up educated according to what our education system provides. So let me recap. So basically what I've been talking about is the duty of the society to do so, and this is because there is a community which leaves its children in isolation and do not provide them the free choice to choose their own lifestyle, which we as a society value for every individual and for all our members. And we also have a right to do this because of the social contract and because we need citizens who think consciously and who can make conscious choices about their life. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this house will most certainly not take Roma children away from their families and put them into state care. And before I go on and talk about my case extension, which is going to be about the values of a libertarian society and how this will shatter any chances of integration for the Roma community in Europe, I would like to engage in some rebuttal. Now, firstly, we had this argument about, stuck in a tradition and the Roma tradition being a bad one, and this whole Eurocentric point of view that our culture is the best, which the first government the first opposition analyzed. We'd like to mention that this has been attempted, these kind of policies, in 19th century Australia, when little Aboriginal children were taken away from their families and tried to assimilate it by being taken to, white Protestant people and whatever. And we see the disastrous consequences this has had, and that the Australian government actually apologized centuries later. So we do not want to repeat that mistake and follow imperialist policies like this. Now, secondly, they're talking about this idea of isolating your children. We don't really understand how taking these children away from their families and putting them to live with someone they don't even know is not isolating them, because given that the children are not going to speak the language necessarily, they're going to have cultural differences, they're not going to be able to fit in. And we've explained to you that in the Amish community, this already happens. When you're 18 years of age, you can choose whether you want to integrate in that society. And the Roma children have this exact same opportunity. So when they're 18 years old, when they are not legally binded with their parents and they're not in their parents' protection, they can make this decision. Now, fourth of all, the idea about the social contract and this thing about poverty, it's astounding to me that you think that if children are poor or live in poor families, they need to be taken away. That would mean that 1 in 7 children in Greece currently would need to be taken away. And we just think that this is preposterous. And the idea about minimal education, which has been perpetuating and everyone has been talking about it. If you think that minimal education for these children is important, which of course I don't think side opposition disagrees, make it compulsory for them to send their children to school. And in most of these countries you already have state schools, which means that the government covers most of the costs. So make that make that compulsory, and then you deal with that problem from there on. But basically taking the children away from these families is the most extreme policy you can do, and we do not think it's necessary or justified. Now, onto my case extension, and this idea that we pride ourselves in living in a libertarian society, which means that basically people are free to do what they wish if by their actions they do not harm other people. Now, I'm saying if Roma parents are found to be abusing their children, well then of course the same principles should apply to them, and proper actions should be taken. But if they are not, then as a society, we assume that they're morally responsible and allowed to make moral choices, lifestyle being one of those moral choices, and that we, as white Europeans or whatever, do not have the right to impose our views and our values onto them. So basically, the idea is that a parent is in every way naturally and biologically responsible for their child. And this is something that is respected in every Western nation. In the United States, if you belong to the Jewish Orthodox faith, you're not allowed to have blood transfusions sometimes. And even if this means you might die, the government is staunch on this approach. And if the parent does not want you to have the blood transfusion, you will not have blood transfusion. So this might seem harsh, but it is absolutely important when we pride ourselves living in a libertarian society and so on. No, thank you. Onto this point that this destroys every chance of integration. Now, you have to remember that these people have basically been discriminated for a very long time. In 2007, Italy, there were huge riots and violent attacks against them in Italy, and then the following year, Sarkozy in France basically kicked out huge amounts of them from France. And basically we see a lot of discrimination. And I just want you to ask yourselves, what do you think is going to be, how is the world going to perceive this? How are they going to perceive if now our next measure is to take their children and put them in state homes? How do you think the people who are left, the parents, the grown-ups, and everyone else is going to react to this? Do you think that they're just going to say, oh yeah, take away my 5-year-old kid, I don't care, I don't mind? You think there are not going to be any violent attacks? You don't think the rest of the world is going to look at us and judge us and consider that our views and our actions are completely unjustified? In a second. Actually say now.
Don't you think the world already looks down upon us, that we have this minority that has been discriminated so long and nothing has worked? That's why we need this
Certainly
policy.
I do. Certainly I think that it's very frowned upon that we haven't done anything about it, and I do think that we need to do something about it. For example, maybe giving them more financial aid or trying to integrate them more. I don't think that taking their children away is the appropriate solution. That is the point that we're discussing here. And this is a very extreme point. So basically, with this motion, with this policy, we see that integration will be very, very difficult. We do believe that a lot of violence is going to ensue, and we think that what's key here is that already we have had progress. We already have them represented in certain governments. I know that talks in Serbia are also taking place for them to have representatives if it hasn't already passed. So why ruin this progress? Why ruin all the improvements that we have made with a policy as extreme and as brutal as this one? No, thank you. Can someone show me the time? Sorry. Okay, thanks. And the idea is that also the cost of this action is not justified given how extreme it is. So if you're going to have all this money designated for these foster homes or whatever, the state care, why not just use that money to help them with having better houses, or even providing them houses, or providing books for the kids, or something which is still going to keep the family unit united and is going to show some goodwill to these people finally, after all the things that they had to endure, to show that we're trying to integrate them, that we're trying to live together harmoniously, and that we do not think that they're irresponsible and that they cannot be good parents and they cannot raise children. So because we think that this is essentially at its core a 19th century imperial brutal policy, we proudly beg to oppose this motion.
Thank you very much for that speech. But it will from the final speakers to help.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to bring some order into this debate. Now, we think that the burden in this debate is rests on three questions. So, why do we target the Roma? Secondly, why do we target the children? And third, why does society do this? And we believe that closing government provides the correct answer to all three questions. So, why the Roma people? Well, they're the most isolated community in this country. They're not just poor, ladies and gentlemen. That's not the problem. They're isolated. They're isolated culturally, socially, and for this reason, they've been stuck, and they've been stuck for centuries. And we believe this is a huge and extreme problem, and all the counter propositions that the opposition has mentioned have already been tried. We've already tried quotas, right? We've already tried all of this. It doesn't work. Why? Because they're so extremely ingrained in their isolation. Which brings me to the second question: why children? It's because the parents are the problem. It's because the parents don't let them go. Why don't you have quotas in schools and universities? Why are they not filled? It's because the parents keep them at home. It's because their parents keep them in their tradition, and this is the problem, and this is why the state has a duty. Which brings me to the third question: why does society do this? Society does this because it has a duty to do this. These people were enslaved. They faced slavery until the 1850s. These people are continually discriminated against. They don't have adequate education, and they are discriminated against by us. So we are the ones who are responsible to them. Secondly, it has a right, as my colleague mentioned, we have a right to do this because these people benefit from the army, they benefit from the security of the state, they benefit from the same public roads. So we're all in this together. We do have a right. Our democracy needs them. You need literate people for democracy. So we do have a right to do this. Now let me engage a bit. It said that this is a 19th century practice by Australia. Well, no, it's not the same case. They took indigenous people and they took them without a reason, because the Australians did not have a right in that case, because they also did not have a responsibility. It was not the Australians' fault that the indigenous population was living the way it was, right? So we don't believe that that is the case. Now, let me engage with another example that they brought. Basically, that the parents are responsible, that in Orthodox communities, even blood transfusions aren't allowed. Well, that's precisely the problem, right? These kids would die if the state doesn't intervene, and this is why the state has a right to intervene, because the state intervenes when you have child abuse. The state intervenes when the parents do not. No, thank you. The state intervenes when the parents do not have enough care for their children, and we believe this is the legitimate ground for the state to intervene. So the first clash in the first half of the debate was who provides better care. Is it the community and the parents, or is it the state? Basically, we've seen the answer to this through history. So the community has not done a good job in educating their own people, in integrating their own people. like I said, we've tried quotas, they haven't worked. We've tried other measures, they haven't tackled the real problem, which is these people are stuck in a loop. And this is why the state is more capable, because the state has the necessary resources. And let me bring you to an example, and this also refers to white children, right? Let me give you an example from the US. The US just completed a program where it invested $10,000 in 4 to 8-year-olds. And what they saw is that over 20 years, this investment quadrupled, right? They got much more back. Why? Because this is the most important phase in the life of a human being. Childhood is the most important phase, and this is why we have to emphasize it so. This is why we have to emphasize it so much. Because when you're a child, all your values get ingrained upon you. Your education gets ingrained upon you. What you think gets ingrained upon you. And this is where we have to operate. This is why we can't tackle the parents, because the parents have already been socialized. Because the parents basically cannot be changed. And this is where society can be most effective, right? This is where we would get the most return as a society. And we believe that the state is just as capable. Sure, you won't have your parents, but you do have state employees, you do have people offering you love. These social workers can provide love equally as much as the parents. We all know that social workers are involved people, so we don't believe that's an issue. Second, clash, but before that, yes, I'll take your quick point.
Discrimination will still continue to exist, even if we implement your policy. How do you expect those individuals not to become even more isolated now that they have no community to fall back upon?
Thank you very much. That actually brings me to the second clash, which is what is choice. These children right now don't have a choice because they're under the rule of their parents. Their parents don't let them go. Their parents keep them in these communities. You like to say that these children can make a choice at 18. Well, they can't, because at 18 they're already uneducated and separated from the rest of society. That's not the point to intervene. No, we have to intervene in childhood, because that's where we can give them a real choice. That's where, and this is also why we don't think that our values are arbitrary. This is a minimum of objective values, right? Every human being has to have a minimum of education. We all agree on this. They all have to have a minimum of democratic values and civic values in order for the society to function. And this is why it's important. And once they reach the age of 18 with this minimum value, with these minimum values, then they can make a real choice. Then they can really see if they want to return to their community or they want to continue in their own lifestyle. And this is exactly the example with the Amish, right? Because the Amish are forced to go for a year. They have Rumspringa exactly for this reason, because they have to see the outside world in order to have a choice. And this is what we're talking about when we're referring to these people as well. Now this leads me to the third clash, which is the society versus individual. And you've heard closing opposition telling you that we live in a libertarian society. First of all, we don't. We live in a constitutional democracy where you're accountable to your society. And it's precisely because we affect one another that we have these obligations, right? You said that, no thank you. You said that basically you're free to do whatever you want unless you hurt others. Yes?
You claim that the state has a right to take children away from them because they provide with security. Does that mean that the state has the arbitrary right to take any child away from anyone because it provides security?
Thank you very much. No, because the state doesn't have a right to do just anything. We're talking about a minimum here, a minimum of civic education and of health and so on, which is a necessary minimum to have citizens, right? And this is why we pose to you that society has this right and this obligation. It's because you do have an impact on others. It's not that you can just live your own life separately. You have an impact on others. Your education has an impact on my education. Having more educated people in society is going to further that society. My life is going to be better if I have more educated people that are productive rather than having them stay in their isolated, closed communities. And this is why society has a right in this sense. It has a right to reap benefits from these people, to get this return, because society contributes to them, because they live in the society and they benefit from the structure of the society. Moreover, again, we want to emphasize this, they are in this position because of us. It is our duty. This is why we have a duty to them and not to Aboriginals. And because of this, we must stop this extreme problem. Again, yes, with this extreme policy, and the state does have this right. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable judges, worthy opponents. Thank you for the floor. Thank you for giving me the chance to somehow clarify what happened in this debate. What, do I need that?
Yeah.
I don't need that. I don't need that. No, I honestly don't need that. Now, so we've heard a lot of interesting things today, and it was rather hard for us to follow the flow of what happened. We had, the government kind of stabbing each other in the same team, which I thought was rather interesting. And then we had this whole idea of what is going to happen with the Roma. I've never lived with the Roma, so I don't know how the rest of us have an opinion on how the Roma should be living, and that's kind of how we're going to be playing along this. But before I move on, I just want to say something to the previous summary speaker in regards to how, oppressed people that have been enslaved so far have reacted. So we have the Roma whose kids have been marginalized, don't live the same way that the most white people live in Europe. But then again, we'd go back all the way to the 19th century and say, well, check that out. There were a bunch of black people in the States that didn't live like that either. They were marginalized, they were enslaved, they weren't educated. And you know what? The US government never took their children away. What they did do is say, you can join us. You can go to our schools, you can go to our colleges, you can work with us. And then the black community in the States said, well, hell, we want to do that. No, thank you. We think that's a great idea. And today we have a black president, which I think is the manifestation of the success of such an idea. If Mr. Obama was, taken into, a boarding school, he'd probably not be Mr. Obama today because he probably would have been very angry that he was taken away from his parents. So that in response. Now, I've narrowed this down into 3 questions. Very simple ones, which I think is what we need today in a moment. Are the Roma asking us for help? The second one saying, will this motion, if we assume that we follow what the government wants us to do, endanger the Roma culture in and out of it? The third one being, what are the values that our society lives by, and how do we plan on utilizing these on the Roma, instead of doing something completely oppressive? So, on the first one, are the Roma asking us for help? No. The Roma are not asking us for help. The Roma, under any circumstance in the last 10 years, have never asked us, please help us. We don't like the way we live. We need your help. No, thank you. We're starving. We don't have jobs. No, not at all. The Roma like what they do. We don't like what they do. Sit down. And that's the problem here. Because what the government is saying is like, you're not asking for help, but let's offer this. It's a great idea. But how do we want to offer this to you? Well, we're going to take your kids away. And what does that usually lead to? Well, what we've said so far on the side of the government, and that's probably going to lead to some violence. Because when you take kids away that don't want to go away, the kid's not going to be happy, the parents are going to be happy, and then you have riots. That's what usually happens. And that's not a good idea. That's not a good way to go about things. Then we have the second idea of that this is going to backfire. No, thank you. How is this going to backfire? Because you take kids into foster homes, and these kids don't like it. They might run away, they might get beat up. And you know what? If you take one Roma kid into a white person home in Europe, it's probably going to be marginalized a lot more than it would be if it was with a bunch of Roma people, somewhere alone, all together. And that's possibly going to hurt the kid a bit more. What we're saying is that, well, we realize that they need some sort of help. Because what if they do want to have some education? What if they do want health care? We don't want to take the kid away because guess what? In the Roma society, it's not just the kids that need these things, it's everyone that needs these things. So what we're proposing is that we're going to extend these benefits on side government and say, well, if you want to join the healthcare system, you can have access to these by giving you some sort of benefit. If you want to come to the educational system, go to school, we highly encourage you to do so. And this is what the government is saying, here, go ahead, do so. It's fine with us. In other words, we're giving them benefits. We're giving them benefits that we give to every other citizen and every other nation in the European Union. And we think that's great. Go.
We do know that discrimination is such a huge problem that we can't really change the majority attitude. So, but we end up with changing the minorities' children because that's the only chance to go about and to integrate them.
Now, this is what opposition what government doesn't understand today, is that they keep on telling us that we're going to take their kids and we're going to magically change something. No, you're going to make these people very, very angry. You're going to make the Roma angry, and you're going to make these people angry, and you're not going to change anything because they're going to run away, they're going to leave. Where else have we seen this? With Native Americans in the United States, where the United States government did think it was a good idea, or how the Aboriginals decided to be taken. We've got a myriad of examples of situations where we did take kids and we did try to put them into state care, and it did not work. It worked miserably each and every time. Moving on to my second question. Will this motion endanger the type of culture that the Roma have? And we absolutely say yes, and that's a problem, because in the kind of society that we live today, we like to believe that we need to protect minorities, not obliterate them by taking their kids away. That's absolutely wrong and hurtful. It just doesn't make sense. No, what side government is saying, sure, we realize that that's what's going to happen, but it's okay because we're protecting the kids somehow But we're going to obliterate the Roma culture altogether. They haven't told us that they want to protect all children. They haven't told us that they want to get rid of all of poverty. They just said that we want to do this to the Roma kids, which finds side opposition kind of puzzled by saying, well, if you want to protect people that don't have access to food, water, and health care, then why don't you do it by doing it for everyone? Why just the Roma? They have not conceded, not once, by saying that they want to change the Roma lifestyle, but side opposition tells you, well, that's the only thing that's going to happen. And that's not going to work well for the Roma. Side opposition is telling you that they do have a special kind of lifestyle. They do have a special... That's the kind of people we are. There's no thank you. There's a minority, and we think, well, if that minority is working well, if that minority is happy, and if we ought to give these people benefits, we will give these people these benefits. But other than that, we're not going to pick up their children, because the children belongs to the mother. And the only person that can take care of these children, and the only person that can tell these children what to do, how to live, what kind of food to eat, are the Roma. Let me make a little parallel here. In everyone's house over here, our parents told us when we can watch TV, what kind of food we can eat, told us when we can go out. It's kind of the way our culture works. It's the same thing with the Roma. They get to be told when they watch TV, if they have a TV, what kind of food they're going to eat, and all these things. So in other words, it's very comparative, but for some reason, because they're that different, side government says we need to change this by taking all away their kids, which is the worst thing I've heard since the Greek War, where they did take kids, and everyone was very, very angry for about 400 years after that. Now, on to my third question. What set of values does our society live by? And what my partner told you, and I think was a brilliant idea, was that, well, we live in a libertarian society. Side government said, no, we don't. We live in some sort of constitutional democracy. It's a libertarian society, which means that we protect people's rights. That's what liberals do. They go out and say, you've got a right, and we ought to protect it, and we're going to do it this way. Now, what their kind of society is that it's an oppressive one. We want to take kids away. No one's going to be happy in this, but we still think it's the best thing to do because we're the state and we're cool. But we think that's not cool because people aren't going to be happy. It's oppressing. What Sophia was telling you, what we're telling you is that in a liberal type of society, what we tell people is that they have the choice to do things the way they want to do as long as they're not hurting each other. And that's what we stand by. Leave the Roma kids with the Roma parents as long as they're not hurting anyone. Thank you.
Well,